John Beaudin, Rock History Book. How is everybody? Happy Friday night to you. This is not our Friday Night Live because this is Rock History Book, where we look at important things that happened in the history of rock and roll. Sometimes we look at quirky things. If you want to support the channel, there are links in the description for PayPal if you want to make us a donation, or else Patreon if you want to get early access to a lot of our videos, especially with rock history music, because this weekend we're putting up about 20 videos early for our Patreon fans. So, howdy, let's get it started. He was the second guitarist in a band that sold 75 million records. Now, he wasn't involved in all of that, but we'll tell you what he was involved with. He was born November 29th, 1951. He's celebrating a birthday this past week. Started playing guitar at 11, an acoustic he borrowed from a friend. By 13, he was taking lessons. By 15, he joined a band called the Tornadoes. Later, he joined another group with another local musician called Sib Hashian. I think you know who we're talking about. Then he met a singer, guitarist Brad Delp, and bassist Fred Sheehan. He tried to join their band, but you know what? They weren't big on that. Our subject is Barry Goudreau, who, like a lot of musicians, decided to get an education instead of just becoming a rock and roll star. He went to Boston University, hoping to get his degree in geology. There, he met a whiz kid called Tom Scholz, a student at MIT. Their early demos. Let me just get rid of this. Let's just show you the album here. Hold on. There you go. Their early demos were going way back to 1969. Tom Scholz, Brad Delp, Barry Goudreau. The second demo was mostly Scholz on all the instruments, except Jim Mastey on drums and Brad Delp on vocals. Boston debut. Sold 17 million copies in North America, in the United States alone, 20 million copies worldwide. The album is the second best-selling debut of all time in the United States, after Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, and the eighth best-selling album in U.S. history. And we've got some interviews for you. We did an interview a little while ago with Barry Goudreau, where he talks about, and it's kind of exciting, some of the things that went down with the first Boston album, because he was there before. Like, remember, hi Kim, thank you for coming on. The original demo had more of a band feel to it, but then the second demo was mostly Tom Scholz with Brad Delp on vocals and some of the parts done by Jim Mastey. I just interviewed Jim. I don't know what's wrong with my brain. So let's play some clips. What do we got here? Some interesting things. This is who really produced the first. John Beaudin was down as a producer, but as we know, Tom Scholz was really hands-on the first Boston album. Take a listen. By the way, I heard one of your question and answer situations you got into, and you had mentioned that with the first Boston album, did John Beaudin not really produce that, or was he a token producer in that situation?
Well, he was brought in kind of a go-between for Tom and the record label.
Right.
You know, they liked the demo tape, but they wanted it re-recorded, and they went to Tom's recording studio, and obviously it was a home studio in his basement, and they looked around and said, "Oh, you can't do a record here." And they hitched him up with John Beaudin. Well, John Beaudin went over to Tom's and they spoke, and he realized that demo was really great the way it was. So they worked out a deal where John kind of was in the middle between Tom and the record label, kind of holding them both off. And he brought the rest of us, minus Tom, out to the West Coast. And we recorded 3 songs out there, one of which was Let Me Take You Home Tonight, that Brad Delp wrote. Mm-hmm. So he did do some of the producing. Of course, he was more involved later with the mixing, but he was more a conduit to the record label than anything.
Everyone remembers where they were when they first heard Don't Look Back. It was a phenomenon. Everyone was playing it. Everyone wanted to sound like it. People tried to replicate that sound, which was very difficult, because it was a distinct sound that was invented by Tom Scholz. And it still sounds good today. But more clips, and interesting clips. We're going to go through these pretty quickly. With Barry Goudreau, who just had a birthday this past week, I asked him, about the reaction from the first album from people around him. What was the reaction from your family and friends when that just blew up? That just went crazy. That must have been over. Were you personally overwhelmed by that? I mean, that shot, because you guys were headlining what in 6 months or something.
Well, we had been doing demos for years, trying to get signed to a record label for years and years. And, I think a lot of people that knew me kind of thought, well, yeah, he thinks he's going to be a rock star someday. Yeah, right. And I mean, it got to the point where I was kind of thinking that way too. But and when we finally got signed and the record came out, it just took off so quickly. It just took us all by surprise. I mean, we had hoped that we would sell 200,000 records, because if you sold 200,000 records, the record label would let you make another record and you had a chance to have a musical career. And of course, we sold that many in the first couple of weeks. We sold a million copies, I think, in the first month. So, but as soon as it started to take off, things were happening so fast that we didn't have really any time to think about it, because they had already booked us dates. Our first shows were in the Midwest playing clubs. And we didn't have any equipment together. We didn't have any crew members. We were just struggling to pull it all together. And of course, the fact that the band had never really performed in public before. So there was a tremendous amount of pressure to pull the thing off. And that kept on because, we did those initial dates in the Midwest. And then we ended up going on a national tour opening for Black Sabbath. And then within 6 months of the record coming out, we were headlining in arenas. So, trying to adjust to all those different labels and bring in the people and the resources you needed to pull it off, it was just, there wasn't really a lot of time to think about how well things were going. We just were, running as fast as we could, trying to keep up,
Think about 20 million copies of an album, of a debut album, which used to be the biggest selling debut album of all time, for a band that, as he put it at the time, hadn't really performed together as that cohesive unit that sounded. Because Tom Scholz did most of the debut album, and I think most people can see that. More copies, more tracks. We're going to talk about coming off that tour. What was it feeling like after coming off that first tour?
Well, the first tour didn't end until we toured all the way through. The record came out August of 76, and we toured right through the fall of 77. So it was pretty much straight through. We played every major, secondary, and tertiary city in the country twice. So we just went around and around and around and around. So it was a real whirlwind. And then, of course, the day we got home, the record label was in touch saying, well, when's that next record coming out?
And of course, that was Don't Look Back. And by the way, some of our comments, Morrow C. Hi, John. Barry didn't get enough credit, guitar work on the debut. We're going to get into that in just a second. It's really nice on this channel to be able to give a little bit more mileage to the interview clips that we've used on our sister channel, the big channel, which is almost at 106,000 subscribers. And it's Barry Goudreau's birthday this week. So it was our way of just like tipping our hat a little bit to Barry, who's, as you can tell, such a nice man. Did he splurge, though? I asked the question after the first album. Did you ever get a chance to, and it's a question I ask everyone, you ever get a chance to reward yourself? I know I saw that interview with the smaller town you live in. I've never heard of it till I watched that video maybe 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to say it. Is it Swampscott?
Swampscott, that's right.
Are you still there?
I'm still in the same house.
Oh, so I heard that you told your parents when you got off the road, start looking for a place, because I'm thinking of, was that your did you ever splurge any other way other than that? Because that's the most sensible, by the way, sensible thing I've ever heard a rock star say. I'm going to buy a house with the money I made.
Well, not exactly. We, the way that the royalties are paid, they're paid out twice a year. So we weren't due for our first royalty payment until the middle of 1977. So as a gesture from the record company, they gave us a non-recoupable advance in the end of 76, which was $25,000, which to me was more money than I had made in my whole life 2 or 3 times over. So naturally, I went out and bought a new car. So
What'd you buy? I'm curious. What'd you buy?
I bought a Porsche.
Did you really? A night? Was it a night? What was it?
It was a 911 back in 1977.
I noticed in an interview you said, well, maybe former rock star to that TV reporter. And I'm going, nah, yeah, you bought a Porsche 911. That kind of, that's a win in Rome thing. You're a rock star. You're a member of Boston. You got to buy a 911.
Well, at that point, I thought, if the whole thing ended tomorrow, at least I would have had a nice car out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, come on. What a nice guy. What an interesting fellow, right? And concerning the original lineup, of course, Sid Hashian has passed away. Brad Delp took his own life. But there's one, and Tom Scholz we know is still with Boston. But there's one member who has an interesting life, the bass player, Fran Sheehan. Take a listen. What's Fran up to these days?
I haven't seen Fran in quite a time. He had an injury to his hand, and he hadn't really been playing a lot. I don't think he's played the bass in quite some time at this point.
That's interesting, huh? You always expect your rock stars. I mean, how many times did we, I don't even have it here, how many times did we take that debut album and read the description of how they met and all that stuff, which was a little bit of a push because the majority of that album was done by Tom Scholz, of course. It's not just an urban legend. Bob Perry says, got to hang out with him in Buffalo when he and Brad had a CD Return to Zero out. And, the legal stuff happened after the debut album. We're going to get to a long time in a second. The legal stuff happened, and then Tom Scholz basically told the rest of the band, go out and do your own thing. And then Barry recorded with Brad Delp, and who would replace him later, Fran Cosmo. I've been talking to Fran to get an interview with him, by the way, to do that self-titled album, which it sounds like Tom Scholz didn't like because it sounded a lot like Boston, right? And then, of course, Barry was in Orion the Hunter and RTZ. But we're going to talk about one of the tracks that everyone knows, Foreplay, Long Time, Barry Goudreau. What was your part in Foreplay? That whole piece, those two songs together. What part did you contribute to that?
Well, I played the rhythm guitar and the lead guitar in those. Actually, Foreplay is kind of an interesting story because back when I met Tom, I had started college. I was at BU, and across the river was MIT, and I had a band with an old high school friend who was at MIT. And we put an ad in for a keyboard player in the local paper, and Tom Scholz answered the ad. And he came out, and of course he was comfortable with that because he had just graduated from MIT. So being on campus with MIT people, was kind of a cool thing for him. And the very first original song that he played for us was Foreplay, because he had trained, as a classical piano player. So that was one of the first original pieces we ever played. And of course, it ended up on the first Boston record as well. That's
just a bit of our interview with Barry Goudreau, who celebrated a birthday. Let me see, get my notes back. His birthday was November 29th. Congratulations. And a big part of the touring band, second guitarist, knew Tom Scholz going way back. When we talked to Jim Mastia, we were talking about putting those songs together, Blaze Eisner, Brother John, Foreplay and long time. He's quintessential rock. Happy Friday, God bless. Thank you very much. John, Village Advisory, how sad for a musician to lose his ability to play. Must be frustrating. Hope you're enjoying these. We haven't done one in about a week and a half. These, it's sort of a today in history, but it's also just an excuse sometimes for us to come on and to talk about classic albums. The fact that when Boston's debut album broke, they really hadn't played together on stage. So they were hustling. And can you imagine? They pulled it off. I remember reading some reviews that some people didn't like them live. I had maybe 10 bootlegs of Boston, and to me it sounded pretty damn good. I never got to see them in concert. I had a chance to possibly go see them on the third album, but by then they'd gone a little pop for my liking. But I regret seeing them. I had a chance to see them in Toronto maybe 8 years ago. Was it 8 years ago? Brad was already gone, so I kind of felt like maybe that wasn't my thing. But I hope you enjoyed our little soiree. We're not sure if we're going to do Friday Night Live on the sister channel because we're in the knee deep in a lot of stuff. Not bad, but very, very busy. Lots of interviews coming up. And if you want us to support the channel, remember the 2Ps. You can make a PayPal donation, or else you can just join our Patreon. Coming up this weekend, we're adding about 20 brand new clips on our Patreon for all the interviews that we're doing. And it's been a lot. We talked to John Helliwell just a few days ago of Supertramp. And he has some interesting things to say about the band. We're going to put that stuff up. I think we've got one more clip for Heart to go up. The Heart interview was based on a whole bunch of different interviews from the Fisher brothers, Mike and Roger, from Steve Fossen, ex-bass player, ex-drummer Michael DeRosier, which is how you say it, and Mark Andes, who was with Firefall, but then later joined Heart. So it was pretty juicy stuff. I say this all the time. We ask the questions. We're not going after anybody. We ask the questions. They answer the questions. And so some people were going, whoa, that's a lot of stuff on Heart. I'm going, well, I don't know. That's what they said. I always say Ann and Nancy Wilson can come on anytime and give us their point of view, though I doubt they're going to. So I've tried with Ann for quite a long time. Anyway, thanks for coming on, guys. Happy Friday to you. Hope you enjoyed it. John Beaudin, Rock History Book.